Back in the day, before streaming, before CDs, we listened to music on albums. A vinyl disc spinning 33 and a third revolutions per minute brought us great music one side at a time. 20 or so minutes of music, 4 or 5 songs usually, that created a single listening experience. This format exposed us to other songs of the artist, not just the hits, and often flowed in an order that was created to build and maintain or mold a musical experience for the listener.
Sideshow brings musical experiences from the past to life today. Here, we discuss and review individual sides of record albums we have grown to appreciate and hope you will too. Welcome to The Sideshow. All right, welcome everyone to The Sideshow. Mark is going to be taking the helm on this particular episode. So, Mark, why don't you tell us all what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Today we are going to go with Jackson Browne, Running on Empty, Side 1.
Ooh, good one.
And this is, I've been listening to this album for a long time. It's been kind of on the steady playlist for a number of years, and it's a very unique album for a number of reasons. But not only its title track Running on Empty, but a number of the other tunes on this particular side I think are very meaningful and enjoyable. It kind of that whole notion of a side that really creates an experience. This really does it. So been looking forward to talking about this one. But before we do, just a little bit about Jackson Browne. Kind of an interesting guy. Really just kind of going all the way back. Interesting fact, he was actually born in 1948. He was born in Heidelberg, Germany. His father was a serviceman in Europe. Fun fact, one of my sons was probably born in the same hospital. My son Kevin was born in Heidelberg, Germany when I was in the service there. So that caught my eye. May not be a whole lot of meaning concerning his music, but I thought it was interesting. So they moved back to the United States, and he was in California. And Jackson Browne was, you really can't describe him as a whole lot else than really kind of a child prodigy of music. He was very young when he started to work professionally. At 16 years old, he wrote a song for called "These Days" for Nico, of Nico and the Velvet Underground, Nico and Andy Warhol type fame. He also, at the same time, wrote songs and for a short amount of time played with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, which was a California band, and actually co-wrote the song "Take It Easy" with the Eagles, which was their first top 40 hit. So he, at a very early age, was working in the industry and had some strong success as a songwriter. And that ability to connect with different people in the industry and other musicians obviously will serve him well as he moves on. He didn't have his own first album until 1972. It was a self-titled debut album, but it had some success. It had songs like "Doctor My Eyes," which was a top 40 hit now of his own from his recording. And he had a couple more albums kind of each year after that. 1973, an album called "For Every Man." 1974, "Late for the Sky." And that one actually, each of these albums was continuously more successful. This, his third album was number 14 on the Billboard chart. And then in 1976, he came out with the album "The Pretender," which was number 5 on the Billboard chart. So he's now having some continued commercial success. You get the record companies behind you. You get the musicians and that type of thing behind you. You can start to do interesting things, and that's what he actually did on the 1977 album "Running on Empty," which we're going to be talking about. just real quickly, we'll come back and talk more in depth in this album, just a little bit more about where his career went from there. He actually had his first number one album not long after Running on Empty, called The Holdout in 1980, and that was really the peak of his success. He had some other albums, including some other singles that did pretty well going into the early 80s, but he kind of then after that really started to arc downwards in the area of commercial success. Still relevant. He was very active in activism, environmental, anti-nuclear type causes that he was involved in. He stayed in the news, and his music and success from the late 70s and early 80s continued to move with him. So interesting guy, interesting career that started at a very young age and moved him through a lot of success musically.
The first time that I really took note of Jackson Browne was the Running on Empty. I mean, particularly the title track. I mean, because it's a song that kind of catches you. It starts out, it's a rock song, and it's got a fairly universal message to it. Or universal isn't the word. It's got a simple message that covers a lot of territory, about running down the road, sort of thing. Although it's not one of the albums of his that I ever listened to extensively, the For Every Man. I mean, kind of the everyman concept, and I think that Jackson Browne, fit very well into that role, kind of the everyman role. And I have both vinyl and CD versions of not only this album, Running on Empty, but Late for the Sky and The Pretender, and those are both very solid albums.
Yes.
And in terms of the songwriting, I think that both of those albums are probably on a little higher plane in terms of the complexity of what he's singing about, and the themes in the songs, I think, are a little more serious in both of those albums. I think that there was Late for the Sky. Part of Late for the Sky, I think, was included in the movie Taxi Driver, for example. And The Pretender, I mean, there's an everyman song. So he had definitely established himself as a songwriter who there was substance in his music, and not necessarily artsy fartsy or anything. It was accessible. Yeah, it was accessible, as well as being having substance to it, and this album, because it focuses on kind of like the life of a traveling musician, and kind of life on the road, so to speak. In some ways, it's a lot simpler and not quite as complex as some of his earlier material. But I think it's a fantastic album, and the way that it was put together, it's technically a live album and technically not a live album.
Absolutely. It's very unique in the way that it was done, and I think, as I talked about before, you get a certain amount of cred in the music industry, and the record company cuts you a little bit of slack on when you've got this idea for what you're going to do for an album. I'd agree that some of the the material on earlier albums might have been more substantial. There's this, as far as any of these albums, I mean, there's a number of songs on this album, and especially on the side that we're going to talk about, that weren't even written by Jackson Browne. He brought them in because they were really appropriate to what he was doing. It's kind of a concept album because it's really focused on life on the road of a musician. It's also a live album, yet not your standard live album. Most live albums that you hear from bands are a band performing material that's previously been released on their albums, which was not the case here. This was original material that hadn't come on previous albums. And I'd really, as opposed to like the concept of being on the road, I'd consider this more of an immersion experience with being on the road, because some of the songs were recorded live in concert, but others were recorded in the types of places that bands would sit and jam while they were on the road. There are songs from here that are recorded in hotel rooms. There are, on the road. There are songs on this album that were recorded backstage at some of the places that they were at, or even in hallways of hotels. So really interesting concept
on the
of
tour
these.
bus. On the
Oh,
tour
on the
bus.
tour bus.
Nothing But Time on side 2 was recorded on the tour bus.
Yeah, so the types of places where these bands would typically spend time getting together, picking and practicing, or even working on new material while they were on the road. They decided, let's get a microphone, let's record it, and let's release it as an album. But clearly, they brought together material though that really showed and got a little bit deeper into to life on the road. A lot of rock bands will have this, a song or some kind of ballad about the torture of being on the road, and quite frankly, a lot of them are kind of corny. They'll show them in the music video, these rock stars pulling in their limousine, and all these fans, clamoring around them, and how just horrible and off-putting this life is. This album takes a little different approach to that. First of all, focusing on a lot of the elements where there are not a bunch of screaming, adoring fans around. Some of the grind of being on the road, some of the loneliness of being on the road, some of the just the you're not really getting anywhere. When you're on the road, whether it be monetarily or making more music or moving your life forward. So it's a different. I really consider it more of an immersive experience of being on the road as opposed to just a concept album about it.
These towns all look the same.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Was an incredibly successful album, 7 times platinum. It was nominated for 2 Grammys, so it was critically acclaimed. It was financially very successful. So his idea to do this unique kind of album really paid off. Before we get into it, this is what the album looks like. I mean, the road, being on the road. I mean, just a big part of the concept of the album itself. The back just with Jackson Browne probably on the loading dock of a venue that he was going to perform in. You do get on the inner cover, you get the lyrics to the songs and a few photographs as well of some performances. And interestingly enough, you also get this booklet that came along with it, and this just has some interesting. It's just all from the road, the band performing on the road. But really the most powerful image is they have this image on the back of, and this, it appears to be Jackson Browne, but I mean, it really could be anyone. They appear to be in like an area, maybe, there's a rock festival or a carnival or some place that they're performing. They probably overnighted there. They're getting up in the morning. They got their family that's there, and let's go try to, get something to eat or, walk to the outhouses or whatever they're doing. It just has this look like there's some less than glamorous aspects of being on the road. And this photograph right here really sums up this album.
These are real people living what in many ways are kind of normal, if not boring lives.
Yes, and the bulk of this touring is kind of like that. There's toil, there's boredom, there's waiting, there's a lot of time traveling. There's interrupted sleep and not being in a lot of stuff about it that this really kind of shines on. So especially for a band that is doing a lot of this, and they're not necessarily great big superstars when they're doing it. So that's the album, And side one is what I want to focus on today. Both both sides are good, but side one is really what I see and what most people find is memorable, mainly because it starts out with the song "Running on Empty," the title track to the album, and this is it kind of sums up what clearly Jackson Browne and a lot of musicians on the road, especially when they're on these kind of long, maybe small venue type tours, feel is you get to a certain point, and that's exactly how you feel. You're running on empty. I do think that the idea, the origin of this term, running on empty, you're kind of in your car and the needle's on E. Not only is this a bad situation to be in because you're running out of fuel, there's a certain amount of risk to it too. Because if you've pushed yourself so that you're actually running on empty, not only is it an exhausting experience, but you may find yourself running out of gas in not so interesting a place. So if you've ever done that in your car, there's a risk that you take to it as well. And I think that's an important part of the song as we get into it.
Well, and I certainly agree with the way you've characterized, the running on empty concept, and in a lot of ways, the sort of people who become successful in a particular area or field or just or whatever, are the ones that get every drop of fuel out of the resources that are available, who are willing to take some amount of risk to achieve what it is that their goal is, and if they want to maintain that sort of thing, they're always going to be kind of running. They're always going to be moving down the road, and looking at the road rushing under my wheels. I mean, if you're going to keep up the pace, so and that's part of the cost of success is being willing to forego complacency or comfort or security to some extent in order to achieve whatever these goals might be, artistically or financially or whatever.
And also forgo some of the parts of life that everybody that's not spending all their time touring is getting to do and enjoy and grow with and that type of thing. And also part of this song. So, the song starts out, it's very quiet. You almost think, is the song starting here? And you can just barely start to hear some crowd noise. And then the song kicks in, and it's got a, you can hear keyboards and then, drums, and you start to hear some guitar come in. It's a quick moving song. It moves along, because this person is on the road and they're moving pretty fast. And it just, looking out at the road, rushing under my wheels, looking back at the years gone by, like so many summer fields, spending a lot of your time looking at these fields going by. And then thinking back, he says, in 65, I was 17 and running up 101. The 101, California, spending your time there. And, again, by 17, Jackson Browne was already working in the, with musicians and singing. And it kind of implies that he felt like he knew where he was going back then, because the next line says, I don't know where I'm running now. I'm just running on. So kind of implying that, okay, I'm still running. I just don't necessarily know where I'm going now. And some of that comes with, things that you thought when you were younger. And other comes with that fatigue of just having gone for so long, you start to lose track of where it is that you're going.
Well, and if you choose a life on the road, that comes with movement. Mm-hmm. And whether it's from place to place or to keep moving towards something or away from something else, and so that sort of tranquility of parking the car and going and sitting on the bench by the scenic overlook, you're going to have to get back in the car and either go home or keep going in the other direction. Uh, uh, so it's kind of like this is the life I've chosen, and
Yep.
part of it includes, going out on the road and doing this. Uh,
Yep. And the the song continues on with that kind of thought as it quickly goes into the chorus, and it's running on empty, running blind, running into the sun, but I'm running behind. And that is, I think that that's really key with this notion of look, I am running, and do this. Look, he's touring, he's had success, he's moving, he's continuing, but he feels like he's running behind. And you kind of hear this not just in this particular song, but you'll hear this in a lot of the rest of the songs on this side. That yeah, things can be going, but that doesn't mean that I feel like things are going the way that it should. So, and
You're
there's
trying to-
also
you're
go on.
trying to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking, racing
Yes.
around to come up behind you again.
Exactly, and it starts, it starts all over again. And he as we get into the next verse, as the next verse ends, he even says, "I don't know when that road turned into the road I'm on." And so clearly, somewhere along the lines, things changed. Again, when he was young, this is what he wanted to do. This is, of course, it's what he wanted to do. And somewhere along the line, that's changed. He doesn't really know the road that he's on or when it changed into this particular road. But the song bridges with a, kind of it changes up a bit. And he talks about everywhere he goes that what's really important to him is that he makes people happy. He makes people dance. He says, all this is kind of worth it. If it takes all night, that'll be all right. If I can get you to smile before I leave. So clearly feeling the response from the crowd, whether it's dancing or the applause or that type of thing, is what makes all of this worthwhile.
And the where you go, everyone I know, everywhere I go, people need some reason to believe. And then he comes
Yeah.
in really quickly with, I don't know about anyone but me.
Yeah.
And then if it takes all night, it'll be all right
Yeah.
if I can get you to smile before I leave. But that just sticking there, I don't know about anyone but me.
Yeah.
It's sort of the, I'm running into the sun. I mean, the song it's a positive energy song as far as I'm concerned. I mean, from the beginning, there's nothing down about it. It's like we're rolling, we're moving, we're logging miles. This is a good thing. But then there's these, I'm running behind, and I don't know how it turned into this, and that I don't know about anyone but me, I think is just a very unique little thing in the middle of this song, because he's kind of saying, all I really know about is what's inside of me. And the only way I can tell if I'm doing any good is if I get the smile or the applause or or evidence that I've made some people happy for the time that I'm up here playing music.
Well, and this song then will resonate that because I know exactly the way that line comes off in the song. I know what you're talking about, how that has a way of sticking out. And that people that, especially younger people, as you start to enter working life and I listened to this song a lot when I was in the service. And when I first got out of the service, and sometimes there's a tension where you're looking around. It's like, how come everybody else out there seems to have this figured out? They've got a job and they seem to know what they're doing, and they've got a relationship that seems to be working for them. And how come everybody but me seems to have this figured out? And there's everybody but me is not behind. They seem to be on time and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I don't know, for me, again, I a lot of people didn't go into the service when they got out of high school, and they were off going to college, and they were doing other things, and it just that feeling like I'm lagging behind, and I'm looking around at everybody else out there. I mean, and that line that you talked about really really kind of sticks out. Look, I'm talking about me. You guys all seem to have it squared away, right? But me, this is what I'm feeling. Just a great song, and it's not. I think you said it. This is not a sad song. This is an
No.
upbeat, kind of. People were listening to this song, and you could hear the audience respond. Again, they never would have heard this song before, and it brought that kind of excitement in the crowd.
Well, and speaking as someone who did not go into the military after high school, but went off to college, I didn't feel any different than exactly how you're describing.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason why that line just sort of sticks out in the song.
Sure.
And it's funny that as you grow older, you realize how many more that most people out there, that's how they feel.
Yeah.
When they look at what's happening around them, they see stability and normalcy in others, and well, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And it's not, and that's just the way it is. That's not good or bad, unless you get obsessive about it. But that's part of that. It's a very simple way of summing up what it's like just to be a person amongst others walking the face of this earth.
Absolutely. And so these are some of the, I wouldn't even call them complexities, but getting into the lyrics, but just at the most basic level. I mean, the song is called Running on Empty. And, and everybody has felt that, that notion. Either it's you're part of the way through a very long work day. You've had an overly long night before, and you've gotta keep on moving forward, or you're just in the midst of any type of long struggle or toil or whatever, that feeling of running on empty, and it just it resonates, and it plays in a way that just kind of helps out people that are feeling that way.
When I think there was an excellent use of this song in a movie, the movie Salvador, starring James Woods, and James Woods plays a kind of a left-wing photojournalist, and this is when there were things in the early 80s, things were happening in El Salvador, and he and one of his buddies are going to drive from San Francisco down to El Salvador to check it out, and they're driving presumably through Mexico in this old, like mid 60s era convertible Ford Mustang. Yeah. And they're off.
Good movie.
They're off. They're on the road. They're kind of seeking adventure, kind of going into the unknown. And for part of that, this song is playing in the background, and it made it seem noble and honorable, which really was not the way the character is portrayed in the movie. The James Woods character in that movie is not portrayed. He's kind of a weaselly sort of guy, but I thought that was a very effective use of this song.
Well, it's a song. It's the type of song you'd want to put on if you were feeling tired and you were driving. This would be the song to do it, because again, it does have that upbeat, just kind of moving aspect to it that that'll wake you up a little bit.
Yeah, great song.
And unlike, we move from that song to the next song. The next song is the second song on the side is called "The Road," and we really switch gears here. As we listen to this. This starts out with what I would describe as like an Appalachian fiddle kind of song, a very slow drawing kind of violin or fiddle type sound, very, very sad, lonely kind of feel. If
very
you can
moody,
picture like
very moody sound.
And you can picture kind of a fog over really the Appalachian mountains, and an old shack, some vision from Deliverance or something like that, and someone just playing the fiddle on the porch, and as the darkness was coming into this area, it's a sad sounding, just a low mood type of song to get you started, and the vocals themselves are soft and low, and it really talks about kind of the ins and outs, the monotonous continuation of being on the road. Highways and dance halls, a good song takes you far. You write about the moon and you dream about the stars. You know, those lines are going to come back to us at the end of the song, but you're kind of moving on a dream here. You started this whole notion of touring and playing music. You had songs to write about, feelings to write about, and you were dreaming about the stars, something that you could achieve by doing this. But it moves very quickly into blues. So sadness, blues, you're feeling blues in old motel rooms, girls in daddy's cars. You sing about the nights and you laugh about the scars. And it's like that you're continuing on in this notion of touring, going from place to place. You're seeing these things that all kind of are the same as you go along, and just not a very upbeat picture that the song is painting about the road.
Even, for Running on Empty, even the kind of, running on empty feeling, I don't know what road I'm on. I feel like I'm losing ground. Despite the those lyrical aspects of the song, it is just an upbeat song. It's a song of optimism, as far as I'm concerned. Whereas, as you say, now this is kind of like, this is kind of a grind.
Yeah.
This is work.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily easy. You picture the life of a performing musician, and a lot of people. There was certainly a time when I thought, oh, that'd be the greatest life ever. Going from town to town. Pull out your electric guitar and start dazzling people, and and even though I've got limited sympathy for famous rock stars who sort of gripe about how tough life on the road is. I mean. I think that the singer in this song is talking about something a little different. The mood is it really is the polar opposite of the preceding song.
Yeah.
In talking about being on the road. But it's not necessarily all bad. It's just much more no frills, no prettying it up. This is what you're doing.
Yeah. So, and they really, I mean, he kind of goes through his agenda for the day: coffee in the morning, cocaine afternoons, and I should take that literally, I believe, because we're going to experience later there's an entire song about cocaine. So, if explaining the road experience clearly for this group of musicians involves some cocaine. You talk about the weather and you grin about the rooms, which obviously not staying in the nicest of hotels. How was your room? Yeah, fine. You can kind of picture those conversations as they're hopping on the bus. Phone calls long distance to tell you how you've been. You forget about the losses and exaggerate the wins. When you call home, yeah, things are fine. Show was great last night, and you kind of go over the fact that the bus broke down, at 2:00 in the morning, and you had to stand out in the rain while they fixed the tire, and the kind of things that'll come up on the road. So just kind of, explaining through that. And the chorus comes in then, and, and when you stop to let them know you got it down, it's just another town along the road. And, we hear that a couple times throughout the song. And really that's the real emphasis here, is of all the things that happen and all the people we see. And they give some examples in the verses about the type of people that they come in contact with, the girls that, want to interact with the band and that type of thing. And in the end, it is just another town along the road.
Another song that this one is the polar opposite of, another song about being on the road is Leonard Skinner's "What's Your Name?"
Yeah.
where meeting girls out on the road, like it's like, why don't you tell me your name so when we come back here next year I can see you again. And it's sort of kind of a jolly,
Yep.
You got that right sort of quality to that. Whereas this is, and the next verse where, the ladies come to see you if your name still rings a bell. They give you damn near nothing, and they'll say they knew you well.
Yeah.
A much more jaded take on encountering women on the road.
Absolutely. And and that is kind of a lot of the, I think that really, nails it. It takes a lot of the what you often hear about the road experience, especially when they're actually singing or talking about it, and it spins it around a little bit. I think that the final verse of the song has two just really meaningful parts to it. The beginning of the verse says, "Well, it isn't for the money, and it's only for a while." And it's like, we're not doing this for the money, and we also realize this isn't going to last forever. I remember a very early interview with John Lennon when the Beatles were, in their very first year. They were just becoming popular, and there was some, British radio show, and he said, "I could be stupid and say we're going to last for 10 years, but, I'm not that kind of asshole," right? Basically what he was saying. And that a lot of these people that are out there on the road, at least the intelligent ones, realize this is not going to last forever. If we ever want to do something like this with our lives, as miserable as it might be, if we ever want to get out and be announced and have people cheer for us in front of a crowd and play music, we're going to have to do it now. And so it isn't for the money, and it's only for a while. And, if you've been through bad experiences in your life, your ability to say this is temporary is a very effective strategy to get through difficult times. And I think that's what we're not doing this for the money. It's only for a while. And it's getting back to, if we can make the people smile, we might be able to get through. But the verse ends with, you're right about the moon. The song started with, we write about the moon. And they were right about that. They were right about the moon. The songs were about what they really felt, what they were really doing. But you're wrong about the stars. They had a dream in the beginning. They were dreaming about the stars, and they never really achieved that. The dreams were never found. And so what they started to do, and what a lot of people have in their heads when they go on the road, really aren't achieved, even if they nail the songs, they really get something to say, and they say it. A lot of the times those dreams just don't get achieved.
Well, and one of the differences between like a record that people will hear on the radio multiple times or will purchase and listen to, particularly studio recordings, that's something where, this is something that becomes part of their, the sound of a song gets tattooed on their brain, and they can call it back, months and years later. But a concert is a temporary thing. And, a lot of live music is recorded nowadays, for, on YouTube or on whatever, live albums, whatever it might be. But the concert is, it's sort of like, when you walk through the woods, you're moving, the trees are they're not going anywhere, and the concert is the transient form of music. That, because, come the next morning, the fans all go back to their jobs, and the performers on their way to the next town.
Yep. Moving along.
A transient thing.
And in the spirit of this album, this song was recorded. They did two things. The beginning of the song, the first 3 minutes or so, was recorded in room 301 of the Cross Keys Inn in Columbia, Maryland. And then the very end of the song, you'll hear you hear some crowd noise. There was a portion of it that they recorded live in New Jersey at the Garden State Arts Center in New Jersey, and they kind of took those two recordings and they brought them together for this song. So interesting way that goes along with this. Let's take where people are at when they're touring and let's bring that music to them. So the next song is called Rosie. And this is an interesting song. I'm going to say it's about two different things. And we'll start first with the notion of you've got a roadie at a concert. You can picture this, this I'm sure happens a lot. You've got women that will come to a concert, and in this particular case, there was a woman that was standing at the load-in, so they were unloading the equipment from the truck and getting it inside and getting it all set up, and there was a woman hanging around while that was happening, and what sounds like one of the sound guys saw her and invited her in. She looked lonely, invited her in, and bought her a beer, had her sit right down next to him. They said, well, I sat her down right next to me and got her a beer while I mixed the sound on stage so the band could hear. So they're getting things set up. They're doing their sound mixing. He's brought this girl in, sitting right there, and throughout the concert, he can see that he's not really able to engage with her that much because she's really interested in the band. He clearly likes her. Has some attraction to her, and at the end of the show, she ends up running off with the drummer and sleeping with the drummer. So on the one hand, kind of the first aspect of this song is how the roadies never seem to get the girl, and they all go to the musicians on stage.
Hard to take issue with your interpretation. I think that's pretty clearly what it's about. And, she was sniffing all around like a half-grown female pup.
Yeah.
She wasn't hard to talk to, looked like she had nowhere to go. So yeah. I gave her, kind of not, sort of no gray areas as to, what this girl is, but she's a hangers on.
It's and you can kind of hear the song. This song is it's a softer song, little lighter song, more piano that comes into the song, and kind of you can feel it's about something that was never to be for this. So that's the first part of this song, is what ends up happening when he doesn't he doesn't get the girl. Now the second part of the song is what happens when he heads back to his room at the end of the night, and now he has no girl to deal with. And what he does have, though, is Rosie, and it's pretty clear that Rosie is his hand, and Rosie is Rosie, you're all right. You wear my ring. There's also, if anybody's ever heard of the term Rosie and her five sisters, becomes a way for the sound mixer to entertain himself when he doesn't have a girl. So pretty clear that a lot of the sound guys end up, the band is out with the women, and the sound guys are back in their hotel room masturbating to end the night.
Again, I have to say it's hard to take issue with your interpretation of the song, and there are a lot more rock songs about that sort of consolation,
yes,
than most people would think.
Yeah,
it's a fairly common theme.
Common theme
yes. In music.
Well, and also something too that a lot of young men and boys can identify with, or boys of all ages. can identify with. The song itself, though, it's a nice song. It's is pleasant. It has obviously not a happy ending for this person, but he does what he can to make it happen. So it's good to know you've always got a friend.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of things I could say.
Yeah,
but
but maybe we'll just move on to the next song. Kind of a nice, again, third song on the side. Now we move on to the fourth song, and this song is actually incredibly similar in style, in beat to Running on Empty, and it's called "You Love the Thunder." Again, much more. Get right back in. It starts very similar in its feel and its sound to Running on Empty. So we come back up to a much more optimistic kind of energetic song called "You Love the Thunder." And this is someone talking about his girlfriend, his partner, his wife, or whatever it happens to be. And I really hear this as someone who has a partner, who has a wife that is tolerant of this journey and adventure that, in this particular case, Jackson Browne is going on with. Look, I'm going to be on the road. I'm doing something different, and you're willing to hang in there while I do this. She loves the thunder. She loves the rain. To be a woman in love with a man in search of the flame. And I see, the person who's out searching, they're on the road, they're doing something different. They haven't settled down. This isn't we're just going to have a nice home, nice car. We're going to go on vacations every year.
Playing with fire.
Exactly. We're going to do something a little risky here, a little different. Some of the other songs talk about how, look, my gamble might not be paying off here, but it's what I want to do. But I really see this song as kind of an ode to the woman that is there, while her man is pursuing this adventure.
And I agree with all that. And I mean, the kind of the initial, you love the thunder, you love the rain. It's sort of like you're comfortable in a stormy relationship. Now, and I mean, I guess this sounds like a positive relationship. I mean, it sounds like there's a genuine bond and affection, and as you said, the tolerance, the willingness on the part of the singer's partner to, as you said, tolerate what he was doing, this and that. But the second where you love the thunder, you love the rain. What you see revealed within the anger is worth the pain. Mm-hmm. And before the lightning fades and you surrender, you got a second to look at the dark side of the man. And so it's sort of like this sort of clash of emotion in this relatively. Mm-hmm. I think it's hard not to see some kind of turbulence in this relationship. Not that it isn't a solid relationship. But that there's you're more able to see reality in a little bit of mess than you are in things that are just sort of superficially normal, stable, conventional. And it's kind of that I agree with you, the upbeatness of the song. It is very similar in tone to Running on Empty, and it's sort of like, there's some rough weather that you have to endure given the way we've chosen to live our lives together, but there's payoffs there. There's things that you get to see and experience and understand that might not come out in a more sort of restrained way of going about things.
Well, and clearly there's turbulence in these lyrics that they're speaking of. But you can imagine I mean, the easiest, most straightforward and settled of lives still has turbulence in relationships. I mean, it's just part of the notion of having relationships. And then when you're living a different kind of life, the kind of life that maybe not a lot of people or not a lot of women would dream about having, and there's still, you can imagine that some of those disturbances are going to be even more difficult to tamp down. And I this when I hear this song, he is singing to this woman, who, when they get up in the morning, they've got to walk to the showers, right? And that's where they have their "let's talk about our day" type situation. It's a different type of life that presents different types of challenges that really takes someone who loves both the thunder and the rain to be able to be successful and to persevere with. It is, though, there's good that comes from that, though, because this song clearly has, again, that upbeat kind of feel to it as you're listening to it. It's not trying to drag you down or portray this as something that is particularly negative.
You love the thunder, you love the rain. I mean, it's
Yep.
that because into every life a little rain must fall. I mean, that's
Yeah,
as you say, that's if there's a relationship that's too smooth, there's something that's getting left out.
yeah, yeah.
And there's something that's not being addressed, and it's going to blow up in somebody's face at some
Mm-hmm.
point. Whereas this sort of relationship that's being described, and I agree with you, and I mean, because I know I've got the vinyl version, and I've seen the booklet from Running on Empty, and so that picture on the back, I think you're absolutely right. That is who he's singing it to, and they're doing it together. And this isn't like the long distance phone calls, from the song before, or from The Road.
Yeah.
This is different, and this is good. There's energy that comes from the clash of emotions between the man and the woman in this relationship.
Well, and I think that, this was one of the songs that, the previous songs that we were speaking of. I'm talking about The Road and Rosie. The Road wasn't written by Jackson Browne, and Rosie, Jackson Browne co-wrote it. The song "You Love the Thunder" was written by, entirely by Jackson Browne, and I'm sure that when he was putting this album together, trying to bring together all these different aspects of The Road, he felt he couldn't do it without putting out some tribute to the people that stand behind those that are involved in this type of thing. It's interesting, there was another song that came out at about this same time, maybe a little bit later. It was a country song. Merle Haggard came out with a song called "That's the Way Love Goes." And he's singing to his wife about how you stuck with me while I was out there chasing rainbows. You were there, and the reason you were there is because that's the way love goes. And, I really see the same thing in this song. He's really singing to this person who was with him on this ride. And again, it's really a positive nod to that person.
I agree. It's a good song. And this was played on the radio, back when the album was current. And it's a good song. It's not as deep as some of his earlier material, or maybe this is a more personal song that applies to himself and who he's singing about, more so than some of the other things that get at issues that affect people more broadly. But it's a good song, and as you mentioned at the very beginning, in a way that's very similar to Running on Empty. And I think Running on Empty is, I think, one of his better songs ever. Just the whole package, and this is up there as well. And it's the albums like Late for the Sky or The Pretender, as great as they are just not as exhilarating musically as these two songs that we're talking about on this side. So great song.
So that song was from was recorded live at one of their concerts, also at that Garden States Arts Center in New Jersey. Now we move to the fifth and final song of the side. Now this one was recorded in room 124 of the Holiday Inn in Edwardsville, Illinois. So again, kind of like this is where we find ourselves, and the song is was a more traditional song by a reverend. It's called Cocaine, but they modified the lyrics a little bit. Jackson Browne, with some help from Glenn Frey, from the Beatles, added some lyrics here. The song is called Cocaine, and it focuses pretty straightforward on the fact that they seem to be spending a lot of time on with cocaine running all around my brain, and there's some different aspects that they talk about. That you take Sally, I'll take Sue. There ain't no difference between the two. Cocaine running all around my brain. And there's several lyrics here. They talk about moving down. They talk about looking for the people that sell cocaine. So trying to find it. They talk about having to be up all night on cocaine. It probably would have been better if they were sleeping. So just a pretty not a whole lot of hidden meaning in this particular song.
Well, and this is an old song. The original performer, or at least the one who recorded it initially or popularized it initially, was Reverend Gary Davis, and he's a relatively well-known blues musician for people who are into blues. I've got a CD of Reverend Gary Davis music. He was a blind blues musician from I don't recall exactly where in the country, but my sense is it's somewhere kind of like South Carolina, Northeast Georgia, the Piedmont blues type thing, but I don't know. But in any event, this was also there's a recording that Bob Dylan made like in 1962 or something like that in Minnesota, where it's just him playing a bunch of these old folk songs, old blues songs, and he does a version of this. And it's it's very same thing, same kind of song, and that cocaine running all around my brain. And it's kind of like, look, how did I get in the grip of this shit? This isn't good for me. Is a pretty clear message. And one of my favorite lyrics, possibly of all time, towards the end of this song, where he says, I'm losing touch with reality and I'm almost out of blow. It's such a fine line. I hate to see it go. Because he's worried about running out of cocaine.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the fine line between reality and otherwise is starting to go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because it's consistent, because back in in the late 70s, during the 70s, I mean, cocaine was something that was used fairly heavily by a lot of people in the entertainment industry, just to kind of for the get up and go and this and that, better than coffee to put a little zip in your step. And
or when the coffee from the morning was done, it was cocaine in the afternoon, as he sang about a couple songs earlier. I mean, that was just kind of the agenda.
Yeah, and it's and you've got a problem with drugs, whatever drug it might be, when you have to take it in order to feel normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of the I guess that's kind of the message I take from this. That's the problem. It's gotten to the point where, if I need this shit to make myself feel normal, I mean, kind of a lot of people think, well, the reason you take drugs is to feel abnormal,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, to feel something unlike normal.
Yeah, and
But
if you listen to a song like, say, "Cocaine" by Eric Clapton, and you can picture all these people, clapping along when they're playing it live, and it's kind of like, yeah, let's do some cocaine. It's not necessarily what he might have been singing about, but that's certainly the way that audiences take it. You don't get that from this song. It is more of a blues type song. You can really just picture, three guys sitting in a hotel room, and someone just pushed the play and record button on a tape to listen to these guys do this. And one of the lines that was adapted for this version, someone's talking to their doctor, and the doctor basically says here you're 27, but you look like you could be 45. Which I guess you read, because Glenn Frey is credited as some of the lyrics. I guess that's what he said talking to Jackson Browne one time, is that I went to the doctor. He said, I'm 27 and you look like you're 45. Maybe you want to slow down a little bit on the cocaine. This certainly is no attempt whatsoever to be glamorizing the use that it has. At most, that it's like, yeah, this is just kind of part of the grind, but also a look into kind of what it's doing to him.
well, and this was and this was around the same time generally that like the Eagles, with Glenn Frey, Hotel California, which had Life in the Fast Lane on it,
Yep.
and that was certainly not a thumbs up for cocaine.
Yeah.
That wasn't oh yeah, go out and try this stuff, you'll love it, was not the message that song was trying to convey either. And this one was a little more personal, a little more, and a more straightforward condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you listen to, because I've got a number of different recordings of blues musicians that were recorded in like the late 20s and the 30s.
Yeah.
And just because of the nature of the technology that was used at the time to make these recordings, they're not particularly clean recordings.
Yeah.
But they they really there's just some genuineness and some starkness to some of those recordings where you really kind of get what the singer is conveying in a way that's unlike what you get from a more modern recording of a couple of white guys, who are relatively comfortable, talking about how they've maybe fucked up their lives to some extent by getting involved with using cocaine. But that there's just kind of a weariness to the way that this song is performed, and there's that like fiddle in the background, and it is. It's just three guys with acoustic musicians in an alley. Yeah. Could have done the same kind of thing, and I don't think that. I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's a certain lack of authenticity with Jackson Browne and Glenn Frey trying to be like a couple of blues troubadours from the 30s.
Yes.
But I think there is authenticity in the fact that even these guys who were relatively young back in the 70s, acknowledging that this may be bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it ends up being it's kind of we're now kind of moving back down again. It does have a very kind of old nostalgic sounding blues kind of song to it, kind of a light way, and by light I don't mean the topic, but musically brings us down a little bit to end the side. Again, a side that's had a lot of different back and forths of emotion, but just kind of brings us slowly down to the end of this side.
Well, and it's a good side, and it's a great album, and it's an album that has a broad appeal. It's a sort of album where if I have people over who are kind of my age or close enough to my age that I know they're going to be into some kind of classic rock, but I don't have any clue as to what they like. This is the sort of album I might put on.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of. It's a great album, and a great side.
Great side. Great conversation, Mike. And we will catch you the next time around.
Sounds good, Mark.